Awesome. Okay. I don't have my instructions. Good afternoon. I don't think I've ever done this part. I've done it on two. This is the January 24th meeting of the Landmark Preservation Commission, and we're calling the meeting to order. It is 1:02 p.m. I'm Jen Capetto. I manage the Landmark team, and we don't have a chair or a vice chair present today, so we have to have an election for a chair pro tem, and then that person will take over. So, would anyone be willing to nominate a chair pro tem for today? The last person. And that was you?
I don't know if I talk loud enough. There's a script.
Sure. Maybe you should sit there because you're closer to the microphone. Is that a problem, or?
I give it a try. Yeah.
Okay. All right. So, someone like to nominate Graham.
I nominate Graham.
Is there a second? Erica. So Gary and Erica for the record, and all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? All those abstain? All right, Graham.
Yeah.
No, you are the chair pro tem. Thank you. Thank you.
I will speak up as best I can.
Thank you.
Awesome. So as Jennifer said, this is the January 24th meeting of the Landmark Preservation Commission. And I guess before we get started, I will go ahead and call the meeting to order, and then we'll do an introduction of the commissioners. Here.
My name is Gary Petrie. I'm an architect, and I was nominated by the Denver Planning Board.
My name is Erica Wardell. I'm an architectural historian and preservation consultant nominated by the community at large. And I'm Erin Hummel. I'm a landscape architect, and I was nominated by the American Society of Landscape Architects.
I'm Larry Sykes. I'm an architect and I was nominated by History Colorado.
I'm Graham Johnson, Preservation Project Manager, nominated by the Denver Planning Board. At this time, we wait to review meeting records, but I don't think we have any this week. Is that correct? And so we will then move into a public comment period. And at each meeting, we provide an opportunity for public comment on general preservation matters, not specific to a project that is listed on the agenda. If anyone on the phone or in the room has any comments about historic preservation in general, please raise your hand. If you're joining us by the computer, if you're joining by phone, please dial *9 to raise your hand that way. Commenters have up to 2 minutes. If there's anybody who would like to make a public comment about a general topic.
Any general comments about anything not on the agenda today? No?
Praise and preservation.
Okay, or not.
Yeah, or not.
Doesn't have to be in praise.
Public forum. Perfect. Well, in that case, we will move on to items which are on the consent agenda.
Should I get you, I forgot about this. Should I get you to review this quickly?
Yes, audio tips here in the breaking world of our shared technological format. For better sound quality, we encourage folks to download Zoom on your specific device and change the audio settings to add a background noise suppression, as well as adjusting the output volumes for your speaker and microphone to a maximum level. For presenters and public commenters, when it is your turn to speak and you're called upon, please click the microphone icon to mute or unmute. Expanding that menu will reveal additional options to select your different speaker or microphone devices and test those based on that output volume. And if you do have audio challenges, being able to call in by phone is a good backup.
Yeah.
Perfect. Hopefully we'll stay in order here. Call this meeting order. So that being said, if there are any audio visual issues, we'll work through those in real time. We're pretty good at that. Consent agenda will be our next stop, and we have just one item on the consent agenda, but consent agenda items are reviewed by the commissioner altogether. With one motion, the commissioners will share if there are any need to recuse or conflict of interest, and we will make sure that there are no questions about items on the consent agenda to be pulled off for further deliberation. Staff is also able to answer questions, and the commission will make a motion and vote. And at this time, are there any, or is there questions about the single consent agenda item that any commissioners would like? If that is the case, can I get a motion to approve the consent agenda?
I'll make a motion to approve the consent agenda item for January 24th meeting, specifically application number CSA-2022-15-amend for the Denver Art Museum and the Civic Center Historic District.
There. Thank you, Larry. Perfect. We'll take a vote then. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Nay? All right, motion carries. I guess I should vote aye officially. Five.
Yes.
So aye for the record as well. Cool. 5 votes for approval. At this time then, we will move out of our consent agenda and into a public hearing for today.
And could you let people know that if they're here for consent, they can?
Yes, if you are here for consent, you are free to leave. Your project has been approved. So the public hearing process will start by opening the public hearing officially. We'll have a staff presentation, followed by any questions by the commissioners, and then the applicant will have up to 10 minutes to present the project, followed again by questions of the commissioners. Members of the public are also welcome to comment after the applicants have 10 minutes to speak, and will receive up to 3 minutes per person. Again, if you'd like to speak, please either click the hand raise on the computer, dial *9, or in the room, raise your hand or come up to the podium. At that point, we will close the public hearing and the commission will deliberate and vote. So we will now open the public hearing and that's it.
Are you unmuted? No, you unmute yourself. Oh, you don't need to unmute yourself. You got the video, right? Yeah, it's the video part. Let me change that because, there you go. So our first application today is for total demolition of a contributing structure in the Alamo Placita Historic District. Just for clarity, the Denver zoning code defines total demolition of a structure of more than 40% of the exterior walls. So the applicant is proposing to demolish portion of the exterior walls above the foundation, portions of the front porch and roof to address structural damage due to the home that caused to the home due to a tree falling on the home on June 13th, 2022. So here is the structure. These photographs were taken post-tree damage. This is a contributing bungalow structure. There you go. So the home has been visited by 2 structural engineers that have examined the home and determined that the home does have significant structural stress. The original report was provided to you as part of your application materials prior to this meeting, and the second report was provided to you this morning. You're under no obligation to review the additional materials, but there have been 2 assessments done on the damage to the home. And the report states that the front porch and east-facing roof slopes sustained impact damage from the tree. Along the north elevation, there is stair step cracking, which you can see in some of these photos here. And on the south elevation, there was additional stair step cracking and brick delamination. The only portion of the structure that wasn't significantly damaged was the rear elevation, which has recently been repainted. So the interior of the home also has several cracks and distorted walls. You can see those photographs in your application materials. So the recommendation is to demolish the structure as it is damaged beyond repair. Since late August, Landmark staff have been working with the applicants and homeowners to preserve as much as possible of the structure as it is a contributing structure to the Alamo Placita Historic District. So the applicant is actually pursuing a deconstruction and reconstruction approach to address the building damage. So I do have some concerns over the clarity of the reconstruction materials, but in terms of the demolition, more than 40% of the exterior walls will need to be demolished, so we are treating it as a total demolition. But here is the existing roof plan. You can see the walls below that will be proposed for demolition, and those are principally the north, south, and east walls and portions of the porch. And then here are the plans. Again, they indicate that most of the north, south, and east elevations will need to be demolished and rebuilt. So our guidelines state do not demolish contributing buildings to a historic district or to an individual landmark district. Again, this is a complicated application because significant portions of the building are damaged due to a tree falling on the structure. But the applicant has hired a structural engineer that is familiar with historic homes and determined that demolition is the best approach for this particular project. It is unclear if portions of the main roof need to be demolished to address some of the structural stress. However, as much of the structure is already proposed for demolition, we don't have too many concerns with that being included in the demolition request. We would request very clear, detailed drawings of the proposed reconstruction and the structure as it is now to ensure that it is reconstructed and all the character-defining features of the historic property are preserved as much as possible as part of this demolition scope. So at this time, we are recommending approval of the demolition request with conditions, and those conditions being that the LCC review and approve the replacement plans prior to the demolition of the existing structure and additional detailed drawings and measurements documenting the existing conditions be provided to ensure the character-defining features will be reconstructed accurately.
Thank you. Questions from the commissioners? At this point, if the applicant is present or on the phone, present, Kurt, if you'd like to jump up and your 10 minutes, start by sharing your name and address and over here.
Should I have them go over there? That way, yeah, do you want to stand here? The camera's on, so yeah. I'll make this way. Better? Yep, okay.
All right. About 10 minutes and start with your name and address.
And if you could just wait just a sec, so
10
I
minutes plus.
get the, there we go, and now the timer is up there, you can see it, so.
So my name is Aaron Hodges. I'm an architect and on the project. I help out the friend's family. I live at 640 Grace Street, so over in the first district. I've worked on a number of older structures, both fixing those up to add on to this. So help this family rebuild, unfortunately, a tricky situation. Part of what we wanted to do is come in front of the commission to help kind of guide how to move forward with the project. There's not many that I've been worked on over the years that we request a demolition on. So we work with staff and our approach, the family would like to rebuild the house. And so one of our approaches is to rebuild the small structure as it is now, and then add an addition onto the back. Currently, right now, it's a one-bedroom home. So it's quite small. So as a result, that tree is more damaged with a larger house. I'm joined with Mike Ball.
My name is Paul Lorenz. I'm part of the family trust. My father, my grandmother, bought the house in 1945. So my parents lived there, and my brothers lived there, and I lived there. So just been in the family for all these years. Had no issues for that tree to come down, and luckily no one was injured with the house. We do have insurance, but we do have a limitation. We do want to rebuild a house to match the neighborhood, and using the public take with the existing brick to match the way it was, but and add an extra portion to enhance the home. And just to blend it. So, like I said, we had just one limitation on our insurance time. Kind of like to get, kind of a process going. Insurance company. Well, I kind of lose the insurance, you know, we're in a bad situation. But I'll let, but thank you for your time. I appreciate it.
And then
Yeah.
I do
All right,
want
just get your name and address for the record.
to,
Yes, I'm sorry. My name is Paul Lorenz. I live at 1735 South Wilson Street. Thank you.
and we do have, Daniel Lemire, structural engineer on Zoom, and, because a lot of the questions we have building it back and the existing conditions.
Looks like you're muted.
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, my name's Daniel Lemire. I'm a structural engineer in Colorado here. I did perform a site visit on the structure, and during my findings, we found that the front almost third of the building has actually been racked out of plumb. And that's part of the reason why the roof needs to be replaced on it. The roof is actually shifted with the building, and just demoing the walls and trying to rebuild the roof, it wouldn't be square anymore at that point.
Thank you.
Yeah, so I'll just walk through, again, I've been out to the site multiple times with the owners. Yeah, the front facade, is damaged and delaminating. The two lines of brick are coming apart on the side. And then the south side, which is side interior, which has a chimney, it has significant cracking that goes all the way through and down to the foundation, along with the front facade, that cracking goes all the way down to the foundation footer. So that again is part of the problem that we have structure. The interior walls have also separated from the exterior walls. There's significant cracking on those, and we provided some interior as well. Initial structural report, and we part of our application subsequent to this one is kind of first step in how we would like to rebuild the house. How to rebuild it, keeping that existing scale, size. And we've been working with a structural engineer to come up with a solution for that. So in our proposal, we would demolish the walls down to the floor level, provide new foundation wall support while maintaining the existing brick foundation, the new foundation would be on the side of that. So based on that solid base. And we understand that we need to provide additional dimensions to highlight the existing windows and get those in line with what is existing here. So we've already developed drawings further, and we'll provide to the staff.
Thank you. This time, if there are any public comments, we can also hear public comments on the project.
Does anyone have any public comments? David, would you use the Oh, yeah, David's part of the applicant team. Yep, which
There was some time left.
there is, yes. Go ahead, Andrew. You're welcome to unmute. Should be a button on the bottom of your screen somewhere.
There. Can you hear me now?
You can, thank you.
Oh, perfect. Great. My name is David Lorenz. My address is 4626 East Lake Avenue in Centennial. And when this tree fell down, the first two things that we're looking at is first off the structure itself, making sure that it was safe. Once I guess the two engineers had confirmed that it was over 40% damage and not safe to practically rebuild in a economic way, we were trusting our building to be built with or to be designed um, with Mr. Wow, I got your name right, Hodges, or with Aaron. Let's just put out. And his designs that he's showed us before complement the historical district area, which would give it a clean yet a dated appeal for the community itself. So we have good confidence in Aaron and his designs that will help with the community itself and not be an eyesore with a newness involved. And I guess that's all I have. We're just trying to get it as soon as possible because of the insurance and the time matter that they have given us.
Understood. Thank you.
Are there any other public comments to help? There are any public here? No? Okay, no, cool, all right.
I'll clarify too, just because it came up. I think we will have a chance to chat about the professional design in our first design review, but the public hearing just focusing on the demolition. And in
Any questions? I think.
yeah, questions for applicant or questions from the commission, staff or
I guess I wanted to clarify, Brittany, in your recommended conditions, when you need documenting existing conditions, you don't necessarily mean only damage, but that they say that's something you need. So those features themselves that make up the historic characters. Okay, correct. Thank you.
so.
Don't get to close.
Okay, this one will close the public hearing and open to deliberation. Good, everybody. Think?
I guess, maybe this should have been a question, but let's just talk about it. Because building has been so extensively damaged, and this is an application for total demolition, is there a requirement that they place the building to replicate what's there now? The reason I'm asking that, and I don't know if I'm out of order in capital, putting an addition onto a small bungalow is a challenge in a historic district. In terms of compatibility and guidelines, is replacement of the existing building with a building that meets the programmatic needs, that meets the guidelines as an infill, an option, regardless of whether the owner wants to pursue it or not. I understand the idea of preserving the original character, but I guess I'm wondering, is an infill building maybe a more appropriate response given that total demolition is being requested?
That sounds like that's part of the design review and not demolition
It is,
review.
it
That
is.
I would like to see hear their proposal before we entertain.
I guess I'm wondering is if we conditionally approve the demolition as stated, does that somehow restrict what the design options are?
I don't think so, because of the condition that it says the replacement / reconstruction plan be approved. What those are remains remains undefined in this condition, and that it's saying replacement, not just reconstruction.
Yeah, the current issue is maybe just a demolition based on the structural damage.
Right.
So,
It is a good question. I think the second, condition that refers to reconstructing accurately the character defining features, that could be, I imagine, interpreted as implying that those must be reconstructed. What they're proposing, so what they're proposing, but yeah,
Right.
let's restrict them. That.
I guess if we pass the motion as stated, and then a decision down the road was to design an infill, a compatible infill building rather than replicating the current bungalow with an addition, then would they have to come back for modification?
Or we could word it differently that doesn't imply that it will be reconstructed, but in the case that it will be. I guess I'm kind of uncomfortable in second guessing what the applicant is asking for.
Right.
And if
I
they
agree.
decide that they want to take a different approach based on review of their reconstruction efforts today, that they can come back, just as they did today, simultaneously asking for approval of demolition if it needs to be restated, that approval, and then the follow-up plan. Ready.
So I would encourage the commission to have this discussion now because the applicant is pursuing this approach due to staff's recommendation that it would be unlikely that it would allow for the total demolition and replacement with an infill structure.
I mean, I'm not an architect, so when I see these drawings, I guess I'm taking at face value that their belief that they can do this. I know we're not talking about reconstruction, just the demolition, but it's reconstruction or demolition approval hinges on reconstruction. I think I agree with staff that there are likely things that need to be ironed out before we would be in a position to approve those reconstruction plans. Specifically, like the brick, making clear that brick will be reused because it is such a character-defining brick, and that other features will be also retained as much as possible, such as like the porch window, et cetera. But based on what has been presented to us, I don't feel comfortable saying that I would be okay with a total demolition and total replacement.
well, I think if we kind of consider it from the perspective that it is a contributing structure and the damage, which is atypical, if this was a proposal for total demolition for redevelopment or for infill development, it would clearly be opposing guideline 2.58, which staff report mentions. And so then I think it was sort of a very unique situation in that if the house was damaged, it would be different, right? And it would just be a design review before in addition. So I think, for the public hearing specifically, we can certainly continue the conversation with the design review as well, that the structural damage to the building, which the engineers have documented, our decision to make here, whether the justification for MO is justified, and then pending an approved design, whether what we see today or something that we change in the future. Does that sound correct based on the body at and for the public hearing from the design review?
Yeah, I'd like to also clarify, because Gary brought up the point of, is it required for them to rebuild exactly? You in our ordinance in section 30-9, which is the enforcement section, say that if a building or structure is demolished in violation with the process, so if someone tips over their building tomorrow and comes to us, that then they have to rebuild it exactly. So that this project is not going through that exact process. It is going through the process they should, which is coming to you all before they demolish the building. Yeah. So I just wanted to put that out there, that we do have that provision in our ordinance for those of you who are watching at home, so to know that demolition by neglect or demolition because of voluntary demolition can't happen before permits are issued and all of that without and if it does, then you have to rebuild it exactly as it is.
Yeah, sort of the involuntary, it's the funny wrinkle, but a lot of people.
And also for clarity, all demolition is conditional on a replacement plan. Whether or not you include that third condition, this is still total demolition as defined by the city ordinance. So if that total demolition becomes the total building, it would, if you approved it today, it would still be approved.
Is that between Jennifer's clarification and design? I guess you all have to see consensus today with your small work, right? But before we move towards the vote, are there any other questions or clarifications about this one or deliberation? For cupcakes. Personally, yeah, a lot of this place structure here based on impact. Well, if that is the case, could I'll speak up. Do I hear a motion then for the public hearing?
Would you like to?
I can. I was so used to saying Madam Chair.
It's true. And even our
Mr. Chair.
chair and our vice chair.
I move to conditionally approve application number 2022-LMDMO-521 for the total demolition of 415 Clarkson Street per design guideline 2.58. Presented testimony, submitted documentation, and information provided in the staff report with the following conditions. The replacement/reconstruction plans be approved by the Landmark Preservation Commission prior to the demolition per section 30.30-6 of chapter 30 of the Denver Revised Municipal Code. Additional detailed drawings and measurements documenting the existing conditions be provided to ensure character defining features will be reconstructed accurately.
Do a vote here, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Nay? Carried. At this point, then we will move from our public hearing into the design review agenda. Again, these are items that the commission reviews individually with an opportunity for public comment. Commissioners will share if there are any need to recuse based on any conflict of interest. We will follow staff presentation with an applicant's presentation of up to 10 minutes. Members of the public are also welcome to comment on design review items with a 2-minute period for comment. Again, if you're joining by computer, please raise your hand, or by phone, dial *9 to raise your hand for public comment. We'll follow with any questions and a staff recap before the commission goes into deliberation. The first item here is again 415 Clarkson Street, 2023-COA-02, and Brittany will follow you again.
So the applicant is requesting to reconstruct the exterior walls above the foundation, portions of the front porch and roof to address structural damage caused to the home by a tree falling on the structure. The applicant is also proposing a new addition to the home, which will be located at the rear. That addition is 18 feet 3 inches by 26 feet 9 inches, and will have a total height of 22 feet 7 and 1/8 of an inch. So here is the existing structure. Generally speaking, the applicant is not making significant changes to the front elevation or what is labeled here as the south elevation. They are proposing in the reconstruction not to rebuild the chimney. Staff do have some concerns over the chimney not being rebuilt, as our guidelines talk about preserving character defining roof features, and that is very visible on the front elevation of the home. The major changes to the facade will again occur to the west elevation, which is at the rear, and then some relocation of windows on the north elevation. So this is the existing conditions. And these slides are out of order, so sorry about that. And here are the proposed conditions. So again, it appears that most windows will be relocated in the wall plane to match the existing conditions. However, the application does note that windows will be replaced. Condition of the windows have not been provided to staff, and our guidelines encourage the preservation of original historic windows wherever possible. So staff would ask for additional information on the condition of windows. Additionally, on the front-facing historic dormer, those are a divided light window, and these plans are showing potentially just a single light casement. If those windows are damaged and need replacement, they should be replaced to match the existing design and conditions. But the rest of the windows are mostly 1:1 windows in design or casement style. So on the south elevation, again, most of the windows appear to be in their location that they currently are. We would ask for detailed drawings indicating that. And then you can also see that chimney is removed from that south elevation here. A new egress window will be introduced on the south elevation that does meet our design guidelines of located towards the rear and is on a secondary elevation. And then on the north elevation, windows will be reduced in number. However, this is an interior lot facade with minimal visibility from the public right-of-way, and our design guidelines do allow for some flexibility on those facades. So we didn't feel that those were significant changes to the north elevation. The applicant is also requesting to replace the existing vinyl siding on the gable faces and the dormer. It's unclear to staff if the original building material is still intact underneath the vinyl siding, but if it is, we would ask that that be preserved or replicated to match the original historic appearance. And then finally, it's unclear to staff if the brick that is proposed for the rebuild is the existing brick, which is a decorative brick. I don't have a detailed photo here, but in your packet, you can see that it does have a decorative base to it. So finally, in terms of the addition, it is a two-story addition, and it does feature a one-story connector unit that provides a transition between the primary structure and the new proposed addition. However, staff do have some concerns over the addition as well. Our guidelines talk about using a similar roof form, pitch, and orientation. So this proposed addition does have a gable roof form. However, the primary structure has a side-facing gable, and this is a forward-facing gable. Staff did discuss several options for this proposed addition, like perhaps if it was located behind the dormer, so there was symmetry there, that a forward-facing gable would work if the pitches were similar. So while we're not trying to design the addition, we do have some concerns over the addition style in terms of what our guidelines suggest for you. The addition will be clad in lap siding and feature a stucco transition. These are all typical materials that are allowable and is a change of material which helps identify the addition as new. And finally, in terms of the addition windows, our guidelines do recommend some harmony between the surrounding historic context and the existing historic structure. We feel that the addition could have better window alignment, so we are also recommending that those be restudied on the proposed addition, as we do have some concerns. However, an addition on this structure is feasible and possible. We just feel that the design is not quite there yet at this time. So staff are recommending denial of the reconstruction plan at this time, as the structure is contributing to the Alamo Placida Historic District, and we would want additional assurance that the materials will be reused as much as possible, as they're the historic original materials and they are character-defining features of the existing structure. And then we would like to see the addition be a little bit more compatible with the existing historic house.
Questions from the commissioners? All right.
why was the staff's, what was behind the staff's concern that a infill building instead would be unlikely approved?
So, as our ordinance says that you are supposed to preserve historic buildings, we felt that total demolition and replacement was not an appropriate project scope. But I do think that is a good discussion for the commission to have, if you feel that is.
And I'll chime in as well, that the commission tends to be pretty conservative about these types of things, so we were erring on the side of conservative. But also that this hasn't really come up much. So I don't think that this commission, like any of you seated, but even the people who are longest on the commission currently have experienced a project like this before. So that's part of it too.
And we did struggle with this one. We have talked about going through the economic hardship process, all the types of processes. This is the second time this has been posted just because what direction are we going to choose for this particular property?
I mean, at this point, you can have that, take that, giving, somebody.
And just as a reminder, this is for the entire applicant team, the 10 minutes.
Yes, right. And we've got the name and address, so I think we're good there. For the record, we're saying that.
I'm Aaron Hodgins again, architect on the project, and I think we've been, to be honest, we've been struggling with this as staff has been on how to proceed with the project. The original house took on quite significant damage, and so the kind of question that we have about how do we rebuild, how do we work with this. So what our proposal here is, and what we wanted to do was, with the application for demolition, also present a possible solution of how can we rebuild it back. In this proposal, we would demo down to the floor level, preserving the original foundation, brick foundation, build a new foundation inside of it to support it, and then also be able to support building back the house up as it was. And in that sense, it is a one-bedroom home, and so the programmatic from the family programmatic side, they want to have additional bedrooms. So proposing a 3-bedroom home ultimately. So we provided an addition onto the original house. We've had those questions of should we, if we're demolishing it completely, should we be building back up a completely new structure, or should we build back the structure that's there because that's a similar scale, form, it's found throughout the neighborhood. And in that sense, we have kind of worked with staff to build back that existing structure to maintain that scale, and then we're proposing additional back of that. Just to speak to the addition back, we understand that we need to provide more detail to that. Part of our goal was to understand what should we be doing with the front building. That's a big question for me and for the family. In this proposal, we have an addition on the back. I've set the floor height 18 inches below the original floor height so that I can push the height of the addition down. So that as a result, the windows are lower than the original house. So even though the original house has windows at 7 feet, and the addition does as well, they're lower, so they're not aligning with those windows. But all of this is in a an attempt to bring the two-story addition lower down, so it's not dominating the structure. So that was an attempt on a design sense to do that. We are looking at a gable roof that has a 512 pitch, which matches the original house. It does change direction perpendicular to the main ridge line of the existing house. We're kind of pulling on the dormer form and repeating it towards the back. The other things that we're trying to do is place the addition to the north, aligning with the north wall of the existing house, so that we can preserve the window on the southwest corner on the rear, and so keep that original form of the house visible from the backyard, and preserve some backyard. The house itself, relatively small lot. So those are some of the initial design considerations for how we would attempt to build on the back. But part of what we want and what we have questions on are how should we be building back the structure? Should we be building back to the original with an addition on the rear of it? And we understand that some of the window detailing portions, all those things need another round of work with staff, with us, with the commission. So we would do that, have that discussion more fully. But the big questions we have are how should we be building back in a historic district that's respectful to the district. So this is our proposal, and part of that is to preserve that front side of the house and then build to the back of it.
I don't believe that we should vision plans to this same small house. Adding on, but, if there was putting a new structure within the same design and same design as what's in the neighborhood. There's a couple other structures in the areas that's been rebuilt through the years. Some newer styles prior to the land. Yes, if it was an option of building a two-story dwelling to match exactly kind of the same era. It kind of goes a little bit different than what we have.
Right. Yeah, I think those are some of our questions there for what's appropriate. I think this is a good appropriate solution to keep the scale, the small scale houses in the Elmo neighborhood. Beyond, but I think questions you can have in the first round are valid, because ultimately that first front structure becomes a reversion of itself. We're proposing, as we've looked at it more, the front porch elements of site walls be preserved. One of the columns is damaged significantly, but that needs to be built. The other column looks in great shape. So some of those elements we can. Thank you. Questions for that?
I have a question, just to clarify what is proposed per your application in terms of what's getting built. Everything from the existing foundation up, including the framing for the main floor. I mean, the drawings seem to imply that it's new floor framing, new, wall framing with vector air, and a whole new wood roof structure. It wasn't clear whether the west wall would be retained or not. Can you respond to that?
Sure, yeah, good question, and you're correct. The proposal is to take the walls down to floor level. New floor would rest on the provided, rest on the foundation. That would cantilever out, that floor would cantilever out and support the new wall, wood frame wall on the inside, full brick veneer on the exterior. We would propose to use the brick that's there, so as it's demolished, we can take that outer line brick, use that. It has a kind of stress wire detail to it. So we would do that, rebuild the roof there. On, we would propose that the west wall should be as well with the other walls. It does have some bowing in it. So we would propose that all the walls get that straighter construction. In this proposal, and I know we did dimension in detail more, overhangs in this proposal have been reduced 14 inches. We're within Denver building code doesn't allow overhangs within 2 feet of property line. So as we build up, we're trying to provide also a code compliant structure as we constructed. So some of those details are pulling on building code, our
So if you're gonna rebuild, you couldn't replicate what's there now because of current code restrictions,
on some of the
because of the overhangs.
on the north and south sides. On the east end of the site.
Do you know, off the top of your head, what the existing depth is of the overhang?
They are 30 inches on both the north and south and east and west. About it. Really.
And question, are you proposing on the east and west also reducing those overhangs?
I think we have to.
It's a minor thing, but I'm just kind of, I guess, asking it to have a sense of how well you think you have a sense of what the reconstruction effort will truly be. And I don't mean that in a patronizing way, but just so that, like, if you're committing to that, like, you know what you're committing to.
Sure.
So things like the porch window wall, that hasn't been called out on the drawings at all. I have a sense of trying to retain that. I don't know if it can be reused or not.
Yeah, some of that, and I think I would welcome thoughts. Staff has questions on the windows that would go into the new structure. I would have those as well. You know, I've been documenting a lot of the wall image. Certainly, some of the windows, the openings are so out of plumb. So it's a good question of which windows those will take. Some direction from each. Welcome on those. Your question on how to rebuild. Yeah, I've worked with a structural engineer on strategy. So we, under his recommendation, developed that foundation system to support that floor that's then going to carry the walls. So then that allows us to align new full brick veneer with the original walls. So that part forward. And then we're the new structure on the wood frame on the side. So I'm confident that we can build that.
Yes, I was just trying to, and I'm not trying, I'm sorry, but just talking about some of the details of like the brackets that are at the or that porch window wall, those sorts of things that haven't really been called out.
Yeah, I didn't call that that window wall on the porch, but I would imagine if it's not broken, so that may be salvaged for the discussion. I'm not proposing the brackets as the overhangs have been reduced. So that element I haven't. We are open to the option of the fireplace with the chimney. So that currently is not used. Kind of closed off on the inside of the fireplace. So we want to change that. So those indications that we get feedback from mission in direction that we're hoping for how we should build that.
Just one more question, and this has to do with when the tree hit the building, where did it actually hit the building? Sort of in the corner between the porch and the, I'm getting the directions, it would be like the southeast corner,
Southeast corner.
right there where the shingles are hitting.
That's
The southeast corner, and one of the branches went down into the north.
Okay.
Oh,
The north slope.
Yeah, and it crushed the stair wall projecting out. It was crushed. The porch wall.
protected if you will, along the bridge.
You two, your colleague, does have his hand up.
Yeah.
Hold on a second. Daniel, did you have, additional information to add? You do, you're welcome to unmute. Yep, there you go. You have,
Yeah, just,
continue.
yeah, can you guys hear me okay? This is Mr.
Yeah.
Lemire. And I wanted to let you know that part of the problem is there's significant cracking of the brick foundation of the structure, primarily in the front corners, but there's also a pretty significant lateral movement of the back wall of the structure. And that's why we were proposing to sister wall new concrete foundations inside, is to stabilize the existing foundation. With that, we were proposing a platform that would cantilever out, and then we would take the new brick veneer that would be reused and match the existing and hang that from the existing floor structure to preserve the look, and we could then align those bricks and everything with the existing foundation at that point to assure that the dimensions of the house are still met. We've worked on several historic renovations, and we understand the effort that's going to go into it. One of the biggest things is really recycling the brick. It's way more expensive to have to clean brick and reuse it, but I think the owner is willing to take those steps.
Thank you. Any other questions? Thank you very much. I'll move into public comment. If there are any public comments, either online or here in the room.
Everyone's raising their hand.
No raised hands. In that case, we'll move into deliberation.
Section on demolition and construction.
Yeah, so good, I didn't close it. I didn't close it, but it's loading, so thank you.
I guess, to Eric's comment, should we talk maybe first about briefly, or not briefly, depending on how the conversation goes, the reconstruction versus infill and the design review of the design presented?
All right, so section 30-9 is enforcement. Number 2 is in case any building or structure is erected, constructed, externally reconstructed, externally altered, added to, or demolished in violation of this chapter, which is chapter 30. The commission, or if the building or structure is in Lower Downtown Historic District, LDRC, may order any such building or structure to be returned to its condition prior to such unlawful erection, construction, reconstruction, blah, 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 including addition. This may specifically include ordering the reconstruction of a structure that was demolished to replicate as closely as possible the original structure. Yeah, that's
irrelevant in this case.
It's not specific to this case yet. Right.
I think it's important to consider the Secretary of Interior's treatment options for buildings, which are on page 22 of the design guidelines. So the preferred approach is always preserve, then repair, then replace, then reconstruct. But it also says that deconstruction is generally not appropriate for historic buildings. But I think it's of value to discuss if you feel that based on the treatment approaches, the integrity of this building remains intact when it's reconstructed.
I think you're right in that reconstructing elements is an entirely different beast than reconstructing an entire building, and the success of total reconstruction becomes less and less the bigger you get. and you may get to a point that it's like, was it worth it? Was it worth that effort? And I think that's what Gary's been bringing up all along. I will say, learning about some of the code restrictions that are changing some features on the building, while maybe minor in the relative scheme of things, does kind of raise for me the question of, we are talking about reconstructing this entire building essentially from the foundation up, or foundation including the foundation. I don't know. I feel strongly enough that we're in the territory of successful reconstruction.
I think it is an interesting point too that, both chapter 30 says may, and it's not, whether or not we're getting our legal action that way, but also that it is potentially parallel but not fully relevant. It's not a destruction by act of nature or accidents or something like that. And so I'm torn also about whether we should consider this as if it were an empty lot, say that someone was providing an infill project or something similar to Curtis Park infill within the scene, right? We've got a strong block that has a lot of context. It's not all single story. It's not all small cottages. There's a Foursquare next door. There's other story and a half and 2-story buildings that, as a reconstruction wouldn't look out of place, I think, in the district, certainly not on the block. I think it's admirable, to recreate something or to try when it's been damaged, especially when there's a long family history with the house as well. And it is, difficult when the brackets, the chimney, the overhangs, like 3 of the things that are probably some of the most character defining features of the house are either irrelevant or, as you say, based on code, unachievable. And so then it starts to become a diluted version of its current or former self. But yeah, I'm interested to hear how others feel about that too. I don't know that there's a right or wrong answer here. Understanding that we're helping to try and figure out, I suppose.
My feeling is the applicant really wants to reconstruct this as it is, that I would say that this is a successful in terms of what they've done with the as successful as you can get in a way other than, the chimney, missing. I think structurally, it's a very, thoughtful approach that appears to be actually very, achievable and sound in my mind. Although it's, to the point of integrity, it also completely changes how this building, is built structurally versus its predecessor. Now we're talking about veneer on frame, and we're not even really reusing the foundation at this point. Basically, putting a new foundation inside of it, so it's pretty bizarre that way. Yeah, I would not be necessarily against the idea of if the applicants wanted to pursue this as an infill project. Because we're talking about total demolition. It really, the integrity of the existing structure will essentially vanish once that demolition.
I think it blurs a little bit the line between the infill and the current design submitted for review, but we've run into it on a number of occasions where a small bungalow or cottage is really hard to do a subordinate addition to as well. And whether doing a large, and not even large, not a monumental two-story addition, but just a two-story addition behind a small one-story home, something that will change that integrity even further. Is it reconstructed home with a larger addition? If the house was still intact and this was the addition we were considering, that addition something that could be successful based on the guidelines. If it's subordinate or is it a one-story addition with basement, it's got so much square footage, which is a different investment, of course. And so again, not that we're designing, but I think that that's a bigger question as well. This speaks more specifically to the application that's in front of us today. If retention of the original form is a major goal, then are there other ways where maybe that additional square footage could be achieved for every addition that's not potentially dominating the smaller structure as well? Which again is just another challenge. Choosing which challenge, right? And said anything that's conclusive or helpful, just stay open and reflect.
I guess I'd like to posit a way to move forward for now, and we'll see what you all think. Seems to me, based on what has been said so far, that we're generally open to infill rather than this reconstruction effort. And certainly the reconstruction effort in front of us, including the addition, has enough questions for us that we would not be in a position to approve it as it is today. So I guess I would recommend that we follow staff's recommendation of denial, but with the thought of passing along to the applicant our discussion, and that I think we would be open to an infill based on the amount of reconstruction that would have to happen. And that we kind of leave it to them, but knowing that if they're choosing reconstruction, there will be additional things to think about that we'll need to review, and won't know for sure kind of the success of that until we see that. So I guess that's what I'm suggesting.
I agree with what you're saying. I think what concerns me about proposed reconstruction is that they really can't reconstruct it closely enough to what was there before. And so there's this kind of notion of creating a false sense of history. And at the same time, creating additional kind of implications because of the proposed addition, that even a well-designed compatible addition with the original building might be less desirable than a well-designed infill building that's compatible with the just in terms of from a philosophical approach. I know that doesn't, I know that.
I don't think I want to go there.
No, okay, I guess what I'm reacting to, I agree with what you said, that, and because the existing bungalow is so small, a large addition to it is going to be very difficult to make comply with the guidelines, and even beyond that, to be truly compatible.
So I think we've established, and I agree too, that based on the chapter 30 language, that because this isn't a willful demolition or by neglect, that, you know, in spite of understanding that intention, this is a unique situation. And based on staff's review, as well as our conversation about some of the challenges with the proposed addition, I think Erica was flexible and open-ended approach, and hopefully with some good deliberation to help, you know, guide that staff. That sounds fair. Like consensus.
Check the, so the recommended motion has a lot of guidelines in it. Check to see if those are applicable for whoever makes the motion.
I love the motion.
Well, I don't know.
As a chair.
Well, 310, for example, may or may not be relevant depending on how they decide to proceed.
No, on this specific design.
That's, I think,
Oh, so it would be relevant because that's why we're rejecting it.
Right.
Okay. Yep. Got it.
So you think about this specific design and whether the guidelines that are in here are the reason that you're denying this application.
They are.
I think they are. Yeah.
Great.
Do we hear a motion?
I'll make the motion, Mr. Chair. I move to deny application number 2023-COA-12 for the reconstruction and addition at 415 Clarkson Street per design guidelines 2.1, 2.14 through 16, 2.18 through 19, 2.25, 2.38, 2.58, 3.1, 3.6 through 3.8, 3.10, present a testimony, submit a documentation, and information provided in this document.
I'll second that.
Thank you, Gary. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Goodness. Thank you. All in favor? Motion carries. Hopefully, the conversation was helpful here. Yeah. Thank you. All right, our next design review is number 2023-COA-0000011 at 2288 South Mill One.
Here we go. Great, thanks, guys. Okay, so this is for 2288 South Milwaukee Street. This is for the Jackson Willard Taylor House, which was constructed in 1902. The house is an individual landmark. On the left, you can see photos of the existing brick structure and the existing detached garage at the top right. At the right, you can see the property's location at the corner of South Milwaukee Street and East Island Avenue on a large double-wide lot. As you can see, the house is significantly set back from East Island Avenue and has a large side yard. The applicant is requesting to demolish a later rear two-story sunroom addition and back patio on the primary structure and replace it with a new two-story and one-story rear addition with an attached garage. Everything on my side. No, I'll do it. There we go. So here you can see the site plan of the existing zone lot on the left and the overview of the proposed work on the right outlined in orange. Additional site work will include a small new side addition to the garage, a new pool patio area, covered patio structure with an outdoor fireplace. In addition to that large rear addition, that'll be attached to the rear of the primary structure.
Other alterations include new mechanical units, new window wells, new railing at the front steps, as well as new site work around the site.
Sorry, interrupted.
At the top, outlined in orange, are the proposed changes to the front facade. As you can see, they are minimal. The proposed changes include new lighting, new scuppers for drainage at the porch, and new handrails at the stairs. Here you can also see the extent of the rear addition that will be visible from the front facade, which is only the one-story garage portion. The garage addition will be towards the rear of the lot and will also be minimally visible. So here at the bottom, you can see where the rear sunroom addition will be demolished, as well as 3 windows that are proposed to be restored to their original width and height. However, no photos or information about the existing condition of the windows have been provided to ascertain if the windows are damaged beyond repair and require replacement. Therefore, staff would request additional information, such as photos and information on their existing condition. If they are damaged beyond repair or non-original windows, staff would support changing the windows to a wood or aluminum clad wood replacement that matches historic proportions. Here you can also see the proposed railing at the front facade. There are actually 2 different versions of a railing shown in the application. This version does not match existing components or features and is kind of a modern style handrail. So staff would just recommend a simplified version of the handrail that better matches the historic character of the front facade. And then at the top, you can see the new additions that will be clad in James Hardie shingle siding, straight edge, as well as summit brick at the attached garage, and also on the front side of the one-story addition. The new additions are also lower in height than the existing structure and will not be highly visible from the front facade. So at the top is the existing condition, and at the bottom are the proposed additions. The new addition will be differentiated from the primary structure and easily recognized as current construction with a 2-story inset connector at the rear that transitions to a 1-story addition and that attached garage. The additions will also be differentiated from the contributing structure with a change in material from brick to that shingle straight edge siding at the gabled addition. Some of the windows and doors of this elevation are atypical. However, they are all located on the rear addition and will not be visible from public vantage points. And then here's the rear elevation for the new proposed addition at the right. The new addition will be completely at the rear of the structure and will have minimal visual impact on the existing structure from public vantage points. The addition is in a compatible contemporary style and will be lower than the original 2-story structure's height. And then here you can see the small shed roof addition that will be attached to the side of the existing detached 2-car garage that fronts onto Islet Avenue, as well as the new covered patio structure, outdoor fireplace, and new patio and pool. All of these alterations will be minimally visible from public vantage points as the yard is enclosed with an existing privacy fence. And finally, here are some isometric views of the rear addition and the covered patio area. The proposed changes are compatible with the existing structure and will be clearly recognized as current construction. Therefore, staff is recommending approval with the following conditions. 1, that the applicant provide additional information for the 3 windows of the north elevation on the historic structure and show that they're damaged or beyond repair or non-original and require replacement. Replacement windows must be wood or aluminum clad wood. The second condition would be that the new handrail at the front facade should be simplified to match the historic character.
Thank you. Questions?
So this is a individual landmark that I understand was designated in 2019, is that correct? What criteria, under which criteria was it designated?
It was architecture, and the person fairly certain, I'm not sure.
And the information about this sun room, I think it's also referred to as the sleeping porch, some of the applicant's materials. That lack of a date or understanding of it as an addition,
I think it was
coming from the designation?
Yeah, that's where I found it.
Okay.
I think it was a later edition, I want to say in the 1930s. I think it could still potentially be looked at as contributing. However, since it was later and it's at the rear, I reviewed it the way we review those structures, which is we're a lot more lenient at the rear as long as it leaves the sides and visible characteristics intact.
But is there an established period of significance for the application?
I'm reading too. It looks like it was for history, and architecture are the two that I've seen.
These were under the old criteria.
Full criteria. Dr. Jackson.
I'm not saying a period of significance.
Notable position in a master builder, Glenwood Huntington.
Uh-huh.
Prolifically, or gold sided.
Where did you find that?
It was it's the bill that was passed by city council.
Okay.
See, Google took me to it.
Okay.
Yes.
I was looking through the landmark website.
Oh, gotcha.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
That's not what I was sorry.
No, and I also don't see a period of significance. Actually, it's completely irrelevant, but I'll say it. There's no conflict. I just put the plaque on this home.
Oh.
But it's only volunteer, not associated with ownership of the building.
Did you drill holes in the brick or?
The landmark plaques are just locked into the masonry, right? So. Any other questions for staff? Okay. At this point, if the applicant is present, you've got 10 minutes. If you'd like to start with your name and address.
Yeah, it's like right up close.
Adjusted there, so
Yeah.
seems like I'm in the screen. Hey, thank you, Angie Baldiga with the Mulhern Group Architects, 1400 Glenarm Place, Suite 300. Thank you, Chair, Commissioners, for your time this afternoon. Thank you, Crystal, for the presentation. I guess we can jump right into part of it is the handrail piece that we have. The applicant has no issue accepting the conditions for the simplified handrail. We certainly will, that's shown on page, I think it's AS 101 in the upper left-hand corner is that simplified handrail detail. We'll just carry that through all the elevations. Window replacement, we also have those windows on the north side they're not original, they were raised during an earlier renovation of the property when the original homeowners placed the kitchen in that location. They removed and replaced the windows to accommodate the higher countertop. We will remove those and replace them with wood-clad windows as requested by staff. We do have we can include that in the next package. We do have a printout. It's worthwhile seeing it. We can pass it around. We did take some pictures of those northern windows for your review. Then I guess in general, the overall property, we've tried to stay away from mass and form. We've broken this into what we feel are three different elements, the master bedroom and breakfast nook, which is what we refer to as the sleeping porch replacement area. It's intended to honor the historic placement of that sleeping porch by being pushed away from the southern facade of the existing building, but replaced with a new modern development and modern materials. It's also the existing sleeping porch is pulling away from the existing building. Our structural engineer said that was partly because it was an addition beyond the original construction of the building. So it would have to be replaced and after the last presentation, there'd be a lot of effort to rebuild it. So rebuilding it in this fashion modernizes the home overall to accommodate both the master suite as well as an expanded kitchen. And then in the middle, that larger portion with the gable roof, that's the break room. That's part of our expanded addition. And then to the garage up along the alley, we have an attached garage as part of the addition. The materials presented, we are sticking with the similar brick and then the shingle siding, as Crystal mentioned, is part of the hardy. It's going to be hard shingles of cementitious material, hardy plank materials, but those are referenced in the existing building on the existing garage. So it's not, I guess, on the existing building, but the historic garage on Islet is part of the property. The neighborhood as a whole, as far as context, the neighborhood is quite eclectic in its mixture of architectural styles throughout the adjacent blocks. So we've proposed the development or an addition that we feel honors the existing simplicity of the four-square style of the historic brick home, pulling some of the gable elements from the garage to this new break room space, and then historic shape of a Denver garage for the alley side of the property. All of this is in the rear, and given the double lot nature of the property, the south side of the property is actually quite sets up nicely to allow the existing building to remain quite prominent even with this addition. The tree that we have in our rendering here is actually probably half the size of the existing tree that's shown there. So we're also trying to take advantage of some of the existing landscaping. The site has been well maintained and well landscaped over the years. The intent is to leave a lot of that in place and just create a modern home and preserving the historic elements of the home to the greatest extent possible. If you have any other questions, we'd be happy to answer them. But I think overall we've found a nice balance to allow this beautiful home to modernize and be improved and enhanced to continue into the next 10 years. Thank you.
Questions? I have one question about the site. One of the criteria for the rear, for having flexibility with the rear, is that it's not visible or not largely visible from public vantage points, but it does face, the lot faces Islet, and looking at Google here, and it looks like, say, some of the leaves are down, but is that actually more visible in winter time?
Slightly more visible, but there's the garage. So the portion I think you're looking at there is closer to, so that's where the front of the house is. So right, so that curb cut that you see to the right is actually where the garage sits. So the existing house is not interrupted towards everything to the left, with that Long Island towards Milwaukee, would not be interrupted. That's where we placed the pool and left that as just open backyard space. Then you get to the existing historic garage, and that's actually in the back third of the site. Third of the site. So our addition is blocked by landscaping as well as the existing garage structure.
I just have one other question on sheet A8.02. I just wanted to clarify if there's these windows being called out on the south elevation, essentially that bump out, talking about windows to be altered, but that entire section of the house is to be removed for proposal. Is that correct? So it's really not these windows being altered.
I don't have that same screen here, or is that or if you pull it up?
It's not in here, but it's, she's talking about the rear of the building.
Oh, the rear.
Yeah,
Okay,
this-
sorry.
There's
Oh, yes.
photos.
Yes.
it's not really, those windows are being called out as to be altered, but it's really, they're to be entirely removed because they're on that section of the house that's to be removed.
That existing back facade.
Yes, and those are going to become
Or
interior
that.
windows.
Your interior.
Right, so those windows will be removed and the existing addition will cover those up. And you're right, those windows, the openings will retain, on the first floor, we're going to retain that opening as part of the space between the living and dining room. On the master bedroom side, I think they get filled in.
But
So they won't be visible from the exterior any longer.
you're adding on to this, you're adding on to the existing sun porch.
No, we remove the existing sun porch in its entirety, as well as those windows on the left of that existing structure.
Right, I'm just, on this sheet, the windows on the existing addition are being called out as being removed, but it's really that entire addition. Correct.
Oh, yes. Correct.
And the porch also, right there, is to be removed. Okay, thank you.
We'll expand those to make it clear for the. Right, because the one on the screen, that one there where it's all dashed.
Right.
That's the one, that's what we need to reflect that.
Right. Thank you.
Any other questions? At this point, if there are any public comments, either joining us online or on the phone or here in the room.
So it's their hand up.
I'll see.
Jump in with the thank you. So the designation does not have period significance. However, in the general data, it does state that a two-story rear addition was added in 1934. The subject construction date 1902. And then the roof over that back patio was additionally added to make a back patio in the 1960s, 68, 69.
And the addition was built after the first homeowner,
Right.
the person identified as significant.
Right, thank you. That's all good information.
How we can move into deliberation. Start by just additions in the staff report. We can talk about any other comments. I know the railing and the windows were both acknowledged by the applicant. Knowing that the three windows were previously altered, helps bring some clarity there, but the thoughts about the replacement of the windows on the side.
I think I need to be persuaded that the two different stylistic expressions of the addition are compatible with the original building. It looks like we have a Denver brick building, something that was something from the northeast coast with shingle siding, and then I'm not sure Florida or Key West or something. I don't mean to be facetious, but there seems to be, my perspective, a lack of general compatibility with the original structure as an effort to make the addition distinguishable of its own time, and I think it goes too far, I guess is what I'm saying. It goes so far that compatibility is not a concept. So aside from the two conditions, which are fine with me, I think there's a bigger issue for me, and that's the general compatibility of the proposed additions.
I think that would be guideline 3.9, is that right? With an addition to a historic residential structure being compatible, but differentiated in form, using subtle changes in material, simplified version of original style or lower scale.
Right.
And I'd like to add on to that too, that I think the variety of materials used on the addition concerns me, in that we have shingles and brick, but they're two different types, colored brick, that I think is pretty jarring and distracting. And so I was looking at 3.6H, talking about avoid using a wide range of different building materials. buildings in the surrounding context typically use a simple combination of materials. You know, and in this, the primary building we have almost entirely brick, I think. Shingles, you know, may be appropriate too, but then this new type of brick that includes white and red, I think kind of goes too far and contributes to the incompatibility of the addition.
I would also say, tying into all of that, that guideline 3.7 about designing the roof of the new addition to be compatible with the original structure. I don't necessarily buy that the gable form is compatible with the four square. I understand that the existing garage is a gable form, but it also doesn't necessarily, other than the fact that there are shingles on part of this addition, I don't necessarily see how it ties in with the garage, which has a much steeper pitch roof than these are proposing. And both, well, the one-story portion of the roof is both gable and of a different pitch than the main or four square, so very out of context to me.
We have approved vastly different architectural styles just on the same mansion, which is prominently visible on the Seventh Avenue. Yeah. So I think, you know, we need to think some of that too, that we have precedence here for having quite contemporary additions on historic buildings.
I don't think it's,
But I can't remember our whole deliberation.
and I know what you're talking about. For me, I think the fact that something is contemporary is not a problem.
Right.
It's like, what is the expression of that contemporary style? And I think what troubles me, and you said it much more articulately than I did, is that it's the combination, too many materials, too many different designs. It's like there's not a unified edition, but an edition that has two different design expressions that neither of which are really refer back to the original building.
It reminds me a little bit, it's been a few weeks ago, maybe a month or two back, another individual landmark structure that's on Colorado Boulevard, just across from City Park. Which has
Margaret Long.
Margaret Long, yeah, thanks. We have the garage deliberation, but then the new addition isn't sort of a long stretch back set off of the wide lot, similar single story. And there was, you know, a few components of that, you know, in spite of generally being subordinate and being a rear addition and all kinds of things that are often approved, like Aaron said. I think there were some window patterns, there was some details, a few things that we talked about back down that seemed to make a difference in simplification, but also, you know, architectural subordinates, maybe not volumetric subordinates, right? If we make that distinction. Yeah, because I think, yeah, I mean, generally with the existing historic garage staying and landscaping being outside of our purview, and with the large double lot and interior space, that the lower single-story addition is probably not very visible, but I do think that an angular window type is likely not consistent with historic patterns in the district. And in the rendering, certainly, you know, the shingle and the white brick engineered sort of similarly, even though they're different materials, and whether some combination of simpler materials makes sense here, I guess, just remembering some similarities to that conversation about the Margaret Long house, but others may remember that differently as well. I don't want to muddy the waters too much, but the connected garage is a conversation that we've had specific to other projects too, where there's a very constricted lot. Just that long form and continuity to the back of the lot. I think an alley garage does make sense. The duplication there. It's not something that jumped out particularly. I just remember having that conversation with respect to another property, either driving park or something. sort of tough, long, sloping lot that's necessitated an attached garage, which is not always typical in what we see.
Yeah, I guess, you know, some of what you're talking about is the additions, placements and that sort of thing, I think works. It does meet the guidelines. And I don't take issue with another garage opening onto the alley as you were talking about. You know, I will back away and say I was slightly concerned about kind of this lack of clarity in the application and staff report about the addition, the date of the addition, that porch, et cetera. Like I was first approaching this with concern of just removing historic materials to begin with on an individual landmark, which I think is very different than in a historic district. I think I've been persuaded that I don't need to be as concerned about that. But it still raises for me, I think, just these different shapes that we see on this proposed addition and materials and different architectural expressions, I think combined don't meet the guidelines. And so I think there's definitely ways that they could work with that and where they are, where they put it. So not, totally scratching the whole idea and just reworking it. But I don't know if that's, I think it's too much to mean that a conditional approval would work at this point. But those are my thoughts.
So I was hearing then 3.6H, which was.
I don't know if that's still, because are these the old guidelines or the new guidelines that we have?
Those are the new ones. So
That's what I
the
thought,
ones on
okay.
the table
For
are,
that, I think it's fair to cite
Yeah.
on the different building materials, and, Larry, you mentioned 2.7, which is the, or 3.9, whichever one is probably, right?
7.
Yeah, 3.7 is the overview. And Barry, you had mentioned the 3.9, how far differentiation versus compatibility is balanced, right? I guess if we're moving towards, it sounds like maybe a denial here with some deliberation to inform that we're looking at the correct guidelines. Are there any others that folks would? And I don't want to truncate the conversation if there's other elements to discuss, but just make sure we're tracking those as we're talking.
There's 5 of us. Are we consensus or do we?
Say, Aaron, do you have?
No, I can go along with it, but I do have one friendly comment I would like to give to the applicants. Your prized tree in your backyard, you're going to remove roughly half of its root zone and it will likely die. So just be aware of that, let your client know that it will be heavily impacted by the excavation of the basement. So don't rely on it. But I can go along with a denial.
But I think it's important in that you, as we said, talk about the general configuration and the approach. I think being something that shows a lot of consideration for the guidelines, but not the details that we talked about would help create a really strong thing. Is that fair?
Yeah, I agree with that.
Sounds good. Well, I guess Crystal, is there anything else to address that is helpful? Yeah.
Thank you. 3.6 to 3.7.
That may be one that I picked out of thin air, just finding the areas that talking more about the compatibility of.
Would it be maybe 3.10? Compatibility,
You know
but
what,
with
in the new
differentiated
guidelines,
form?
Yeah,
Yeah.
3.10 is page. So I think 3.10 is that. In that case, is there a motion? You guys are crossing.
I'm on a roll today.
No, yeah, stay on the spot.
Okay, so I think I'm just referencing 3.6, 3.7, and 3.10.
Those are the relevant guidelines right now.
I move to deny application number 2023-COA-011 for the rear addition at 2288 South Milwaukee Street, as per design guidelines 3.6, 3.7, and 3.10, presented testimony, submitted documentation, and information provided.
Second. All those in favor? Opposed? Abstained? Motion carries. We work with staff for the next time.
Hey, that's the help of that. We had building.
Very good. We'll have to move on to the next project.
Can we take a quick, that's great.
I was going to ask you to order, yeah, you can take a quick restroom break and for 32 Chambers Street. Thank you for your patience. We're back. Thanks for all.
Now we're back.
Now we're back in recording. Okay. Our next design review item is number 023-COA-008 at 3032 Chambers Street. Brittany Sala.
So our next item is for infill construction in the Curtis Park Historic District. This is on the former DHA lot, which is currently vacant. However, the commission has approved a number of structures on the Champa side of the block. You can see those structures here in this streetscape. There is actually a structure at 1889 30th Street. It's a multifamily unit. Today, we're looking at 3032 Champa Street, which is outlined in red. But this is the second to last lot because the commission has approved a mass form and context submittal for 3022 Champa Street, which hasn't been included in this submittal, but it is a Queen Anne gable form, somewhat similar to 3012 Champa Street. So this block is filling out nicely. The commission previously did review and deny a submittal for this site. Not much has changed in terms of the general building program. The building still is set back 20 feet from the public right-of-way. This is the setback for all the structures along Champa Street that are new single-family infill development, and the porch does encroach into that 20-foot setback, about 8 feet, which is pretty standard in terms of placement on the lot. It's centered with 3-foot setbacks on each side. And then the structure will have an accessory dwelling unit in the rear of the property that is totally behind the primary residence. So again, this is a single family home. The entry is located on the side. It is 2.5 stories in height with a rooftop deck at the back. This is not typical of the Curtis Park Historic District for rooftop decks, but we have seen them on new infill construction within the district. This deck will be completely camouflaged from the front primary street by the gable roof form. And the applicant has revised the access to that rooftop deck. So previously it was proposed to be a large in-wall dormer. The applicant has redesigned that roof form to be somewhat of a cross gable form, particularly as viewed from the public right away. So that is a major change to this design. So here is the submittal that the commission reviewed on November 1st and did deny that submittal over terms of complexity of the roof form and just some general design elements that the commission felt were not compatible with the Curtis Park Historic District. And then on the left, we have the submittal before you today. Again, the applicant has camouflaged the rooftop access with a cross gable form. They have restudied the ground floor windows and then some of the detailing on the structure in terms of what relates to the surrounding historic context. So this design is pulling heavily from 3219 Champa Street, which is a Queen Anne structure within the district, but it doesn't have that shingling detail that you typically see of the Queen Anne's in the district. This has more brick detailing, so it is pulling heavily from that. But the applicant has enlarged the ground floor windows. That design is based on arched windows that you see within the district that are often tripartite designs. The applicant has revised the roof pitch of the front porch to better match what you see in the surrounding historic context, and the form is slightly different. And then some of the architectural detailing, which we'll look at in the phase 2 submittal, is more similar to 3219 Champa Street. This project is requesting a height and bulk plane variance for the encroachment of the rooftop deck balcony on the what you're seeing on the left side of the home, and then also for the bulk plane encroachment of the cross gable form. And it does minimally violate the height of the maximum height for this zone district. The applicant did significantly revise the submittal to drop the height of the structure. So staff feel that the bulk plane and height encroachments are compatible with the surrounding historic context, and are recommending that the commission recommend those to the zoning administrator as well. So in terms of how this structure is compatible with the surrounding context, the applicant did do a more significant study of the Queen Anne form within the Curtis Park Historic District, particularly those forms that have a cross gable appearance, those with arched windows as a decorative window, and then those larger arched ground floor openings and tripartite windows, which you can see here in this compatibility demonstration. Again, this design is pulling heavily from 3219 Champa Street, which is the structure right here in the middle of the screen. But staff do feel that it is compatible with the surrounding historic context. So in terms of the secondary elevations, the applicant has reduced the number of window proportions and restudied the window placement, and it is more contextual to the surrounding context. You're seeing much taller and narrower windows on the secondary elevations than previously proposed, and a more simple configuration of windows. We do feel that while the windows do become a little more square towards the back of the home, they will have minimal visibility because these lots are fairly tight, as they all are maxing out the placement on the lot in terms of structure. So between wall to wall of each structure is only 6 feet. So it'll be very difficult to see these windows towards the back of the home. And then again, that rooftop deck has been totally concealed by that cross gable form that you can see on the what the applicant is calling the right elevation. That cross gable then kind of transitions into a shed dormer at the back to allow that access onto the roof. And then here you can see the proposed ADU in elevation. Same comment regarding the windows, and that they will have minimal visibility from the public right of way on these interior facades of the ADU. So the ADU has been redesigned somewhat. Previously, the applicant along the alley, which the applicant has labeled the south facade here, was proposing three individual windows. Staff feel that the redesign is more compatible with the window proportions proposed on the primary structure, and additionally, it will have minimal impact on the surrounding context, because this block of Curtis Park is all new infill construction or non-contributing structures from the 1940s. So while this kind of tripartite window maybe is not something you typically see on ADUs within the Curtis Park Historic District, we do feel that it's appropriate for this particular site as it relates to the primary structure and will minimally impact the surrounding historic context. So here are some proposed renderings of the infill structure. So staff are recommending approval of this redesign for the phase 1, as we do feel that it meets the commission discussion from the first meeting, in which there was concern over it being too eclectic in style. So we feel that the applicants really studied the surrounding historic context and refined the design to be identifiable as new construction, but to relate to the Queen Anne structures within the district.
Questions for staff?
One question, so an administrative adjustment would be necessary for the railing and the roof deck, is that correct?
Yeah, so let me go back to that. And then I did not put that in my motion, so I apologize.
So I guess my question for that is that even within our purview, that it's or something that doesn't help the structure?
I think that's a good conversation to have. I would say that definitely the cross gable form does help it relate to the surrounding historic context better. But yeah, this portion of the rooftop deck railing is within the whole plane. And that generally speaking, that recommendation from the commission is for it to better relate to the surrounding historic context.
Okay.
I will say that in general, though, the Curtis Park Historic District does have taller structures. So you can talk about how the rooftop deck is where it is because this does have extra height to it as well. So I think you can look at it in multiple.
Sounds good. At this point, without any other questions, we'll hear from the applicants. You have 10 minutes, and you start with your name and address for the record.
There's two names I have, and they're both in there. Could ask them to raise their hand if they
Yes.
are the.
If you could please raise your hand, we'll promote you to panelist. All right, you've got 10 minutes. Floor is yours. If you can hear us.
Hi.
Oh, yeah. Hello, Anna.
Hello. Yeah, I'm Hannah Cochran. I'm the owner of the property. I think my architect will be talking mostly through all the changes, but just wanted to say thank you for your time again today. So to you, Anthony.
Oh, thanks, Hannah. This is Anthony Reese, architect working with Hannah Cochran here on the home. And I want to thank Brittany for all of her help here. We kind of went back and forth a lot with her on revising the design and kind of getting it to an improvable position. I don't have a whole lot else to say other than I think Hannah and I are both very happy with how the home has turned out to this stage. And about the railing in the back, we do feel like when you look at the perspective views from the street sidewalk, it's very far back from the sidewalk and the street. So the impact of that visually should be quite minimal, especially since the home next door is going to be, 6 feet away. So that even further diminishes kind of the view corridor towards the back there. Otherwise, I'm happy to answer any questions you guys have, and thank you for your time and hope for an approval for phase 2. Thank you.
Do you both mind stating your name and address just for the record?
Oh, sorry, it's Anthony Reese, 215 South Wadsworth Boulevard, Lakewood, Colorado.
Thank you.
Hannah Cochran. Oh, yep,
Yes,
Hannah
go ahead.
Cochran, 5652 Field Street, Arvada, Colorado.
Thank you. Any questions for the applicant? All right. Thank you very much.
Yes. No,
Oh, sorry, public comment?
yeah, I think
Public comment, yeah. I'm ready. Public comment. Is there any public comment?
Yep, we have Keith. Yeah, let me give him. There you go. Keith, you're welcome to unmute when you're ready.
Great. Keith Pryor, 2418 Champa Street, Chair of the Curtis Park Neighborhood Design Review Committee. We have taken a look at the new revised design and definitely feel the applicant has made a lot of the requests that the commission had previously, as well as staff had concerns. We definitely loved the first design. We liked the height of what it had to offer. It gave variation on that block instead of keeping everything at 30 feet, which we don't think is contextual with the district because we have such varied heights throughout. But the applicant has conformed to what the commission had requested of them. We do have a little bit of concerns with the second story windows. We feel that they are a bit squat. And the primary structure that they did reference is one of my favorite houses in the neighborhood. And that one doesn't quite penetrate up into the upper levels or the gable for those windows, but the vast majority of our Queen Anne's do. And I think a little extra height on those front windows would go a long way in the design, as well as the windows on the second story along the sides of the building. And then just the smaller windows in the ADU, as we stated out in our letter, but again, those aren't visible from the street. But overall, we do support this design and ask the commission to move it forward with just we would love to see those windows be taller and narrower to match that of the district. Thanks so much.
Thank you, Keith. Any other public comments? Please raise your hand if you would like to make a public comment.
None raised.
All right, and we're sitting in an empty room here for the record, so.
Yeah, there you go. I can see now.
Perfect, we'll continue then. Any staff recap?
I do have staff recap. I did not include the recommendation for height bulk plane in this suggested motion, but if you look at the staff report for the next project, it does have that wording there, so you can just pull it from there. And then this block, the new infill on this block will have varying heights. The shortest structure is 24 feet, 7 inches, and the tallest one is actually 31 feet, I believe. So there will be some variety in height along this block. Not every single one is exactly 30 feet in height.
For clarifying. All right, with that, we'll move into deliberation.
Well, I guess I'll say first that if we want to discuss everything except for the bulk plane piece, I'm happy to do that first. Since I'm talking, I like it. I think they've done a, yeah, as Seth said, I think they've done an excellent job of, based on what we saw in November, making that more compatible with neighborhood and just making it architecturally logical. I think it's kind of awkward and nicely resolved way of making that access for deck makes sense, and then the changes to the front windows, I agree. Since I don't know if I have any strong feelings regarding Steve's comments about the height proportions of the upper windows, they don't bother me as proposed. I'm curious what other issues.
And I would agree and say that I think the movement from the big sort of hip cross gable to a subtle roof form makes a big difference. And, you know, generally the height and the detailing, I think, yeah, reference as well. I'm eager to talk about the merits of historical plane versus roof deck. I've known that this is an infill project, I'll clarify that. A block of new construction. Anyone else have any other comments on the previous changes or anything other than the bulk?
Responding to the comment about second floor windows, I understand the comment related to the windows on the two side elevations, which won't have a lot of visibility, so not too concerned about them. It's sort of whatever the consensus is. The front facing windows on the second floor seem to be okay in terms of proportion. So I don't think we need to add a condition to make the side elevations, like four windows, taller or more vertical.
I agree with staff's assessment there as well. So with respect to the bulk plane, I think we have two things going on, and we have seen a lot of bulk plane and setback adjustments for this particular block, two sides of the street, where the overall height in Curtis Park has been one of the challenges, which has been addressed here. But I don't know, and Jen, Brittany may be able to remind us if we made any bulk plane concessions for non-historic elements. Or, yeah, I know that was something that Kelly, I think, brought up in previous deliberation as well, that as a reform, the overall height of a 2.5 or 3-story Queen Victorian is tall, that wasn't historically tall to accommodate a roof deck. And I think that may be kind of the crux of some of the conversation. I'm curious to hear what other commissioners think too.
Generally, roof decks don't contribute to compatibility.
Can I clarify though, because Graham asked if you all have recommended approval of bulk plane for non-historic buildings or features of buildings, and yes, the answer is yes. Yeah, regularly. And oftentimes it's like a cornice is sticking out, or a dormer, or something. Not necessarily railing for roof deck, but that's not beyond the scope of what you guys have done in the past.
Sounds like you were trying to separate, though, say a cornice or a dormer that is kind of, is there to help fit into the context versus a deck railing that is more about providing a certain amenity that is not related to the historic context.
I think amenity is the word that, architectural feature versus feels like sort of the balance here. I guess to play the devil's advocate a little bit too, I appreciate and I think that the study of other similarly tall and cross-gabled Queen Anne's is helpful. I think one of the conclusions that I draw is many of the examples were 1.5 as opposed to full 2-story within, a heightened attic, cross-gable, where that was moving space, or it was by virtue of windows or other, facade elements, something that kind of spoke to the character. I think that the cross-gable here does a much nicer job of allowing that roof deck access than sort of the big hitch being did. But I guess, the justification as to whether that's historic, and again, this being infill, we're not modifying an existing or not an individual landmark like we've looked at. I guess those distinctions here in the context of the bigger infill that's happened in this law.
I guess to that concern, I think the cross gable component to me is not of concern in terms of recommending the administrative adjustment for that, because we are, whatever the use of such a, kind of cross gable would be, whether to add interior space in an attic or to create access to an exterior, the idea that its formal purpose is to, make the building more compatible with the surroundings makes sense to improve it on those grounds. It's more the railing. I don't see a reason, or I don't see how that would help this.
Justify.
Yeah.
The truncated chimney almost in elevation, which I know perspective as we discussed.
Yeah, and I'm not even really concerned about it being visible per se. It's more just, setting a precedent that.
But are we parsing out those two components? I mean, I think we just make, generally, the language has just been that we're recommending that adjustment.
As opposed to one or the other.
So you can, generally speaking, we do it as a collective, but you can say I'm for specific elements, so that would be clarified. So you would say, I recommend approval for the cross gable encroachment and the building height encroachment.
Well, I mean, I see two ways here. I think the precedent that Larry mentioned is important. I think that the likelihood of any visibility from the street is low, like the applicant said, especially being 30+ feet back. I think, whenever we talk about precedents, at least in deliberation, it seems helpful to kind of gauge the case here, where this is a brand new structure on a block of brand new structures, which all brought somewhat contemporary or modern twists, some very much more so than others, but in the context of this specific block, maybe not the whole Curtis Park Historic District, they're very modern, well done interpretations of historic massive forms in the neighborhood. But we've had, in the example we talked about earlier, very dramatic material changes or additions or transitions. I know several of these have gone from quite reserved, traditional to very contemporary, to back of the lot too. So,
I mean, if other commissioners aren't concerned about it, then the other consensus stuff.
Before you vote on a motion, I'm sorry, Gary, was I interrupting you on the discussion?
Well, if you're gonna respond to what Larry just said, maybe you did it, maybe you didn't.
I just want to remind the commission on the actual review criteria for an administrative adjustment. I think we might be a little bit confused. The language from the zoning code says, the zoning administrator may approve an adjustment that results in a structure taller than a similar building form located within the existing neighborhood if this commission finds specifically that development on the zone lot conforming to this code's height or bulk regulations would have an adverse impact upon the historic character of the historic district. So I think there's been some talk about maybe this is more in line with the context, but I don't know if that's the actual review criteria. This seems to say, in this specific example, looking at page 2 of Brittany's report, is the 9-foot 11-inch encroachment necessary, because if it conformed to the zoning code standards, that would be an adverse impact upon this historic district. As you know, numerous reviews can meet the guidelines. So absent the actual zoning requirement, something to meet the guidelines. But in order to recommend that administrative adjustment, the criteria is, does conformance to the zoning have an adverse impact? And let me know if I'm being confusing with that, or
for example, if I'm understanding what you're saying, for us to recommend the administrative adjustment in this case, the basis for that is that because the encroachment is related to the roof deck, we're saying that without the roof deck, compliance with preservation, with the guidelines is adversely affected.
I'd say more compliance with the zoning code is adversely impacted. So the classic example is a theoretical district of houses that are all 50 feet high. The zoning only allows a 20-foot high house. And so something new is going to look like that along the block. Would that 20-foot house have an adverse impact on that theoretical historic district? Now, granted, to meet the guidelines, maybe the height is 35 feet, 55 feet, 45 feet. That all could be guidelines, but for zoning, that's where the administrative adjustment comes in.
I guess that's what I was trying to say about the railing is where it is, because Curtis Park is a tall historic district, and strict compliance with the zoning code has not always been favorable in terms of floor-to-floor heights, compatibility with the surrounding context.
I mean, and when we've been talking about context, this discussion, I think we're meaning how its impact on the historic district. So I think we're going along with what Adam's been talking about, not using the exact language.
Are we taking it too far, though? If Adam cited language about adverse impact, we're almost flip side of that justifying. Say that this application without the railing, without a side gate, meet our guidelines. versus, and would also meet the zoning guidelines versus saying that the railing and or side gable would make it more historically appropriate in spite of not meeting the zoning guidelines. Is that correct, or is that?
I guess it's a two-part, right? And I'm not making a decision for you, but if you all decided that this review right now met the guidelines, you could approve that as is, saying these guidelines, X, Y, and Z. But then the second step is, do these zoning nonconformities, are they necessary because they would have an adverse impact on the historic district? That's almost a second discussion. If you did not feel that way, they could still go to the board for a variance on those. It would just be based on something other than the adverse impact of the historic district.
On some occasions, yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
What, has the zoning board ever denied one of our recommendations?
Yes, but they have been told that that is no longer appropriate, because they used to say, well, what does the commission know about zoning, and ignore it. And so, there's been a lot of training on that, if you all are recommending a variance to the Board of Adjustment, that it is meant to be something that should generally be approved. Kind of like when you guys looked at a non-contributing building in the district for demo.
So for clarity though, the cross gable form, it sounds like you're comfortable with, and the height you're comfortable with, that would still be an administrative adjustment. The variance then would be for the railing, which it doesn't sound like you're recommending. So therefore it would go to the Board of Adjustment without any recommendation to the commission under a separate criteria than the historic criteria, as Adam was indicating.
Right.
And to complicate matters further, both of these items can be administratively adjusted.
Potentially under a different criteria.
I guess the way I understand it is that we're going to be pure about recommending administrative adjustments. We should be doing that only when necessary to allow the building to meet our guidelines.
I would say it would be necessary to alleviate an adverse impact on the historic district.
Character of the historic district.
So I guess
The flip side of kind of what you're
I'm
saying.
kind of saying the same thing, but in a different way. So in other words, if we think, I guess in this particular case, both the cross gable and the railing are related to the roof deck. And for us to recommend administrative adjustment, we're saying that the roof deck contributes to the compatibility of this building to the guidelines, which
Or to not have the roof deck would have an
adverse
adverse
effect,
impact.
right? Which that's a hard argument to make.
Yes.
So, in that case, we might approve this without the recommendation and let the applicant sort it out with zoning.
Would be only the recommendation for overall height, is that correct? Because the peak of the roof of the gable,
Yeah.
Victorian height, that does tie, but
Yeah.
yeah, I think that's.
I don't know if that's too extreme or not, but I mean, buildings don't have to have roof decks meet our guidelines or compatibility with the district.
I don't disagree with you.
It'll be quiet
Yeah,
for a little while.
yeah, I agree with that assessment, that the height, in order to allow the gable, the overall gable height, is, that would be, yeah, it would adversely affect the district if we did allow it to be, the overall form of the house to be context. But yeah, everything related to the roof deck, and not,
Yeah. Which isn't to say that, again, as it's drawn, you know, the cross gable speaks to historic forms, and we can say, feel comfortable from a guideline perspective, but it's not our something for that one from a necessary historic character.
Yeah. And in the same regard, the railing, I think, these guidelines of being far back enough from the street that you don't see it.
I'm completely confused at this.
I think is it fair to say that we're maybe moving towards an approval with a height recommendation, but only an overall height?
It also needs to be both planes because the cross gable on the south is within the.
But we're saying that the cross gable is not something that would be historically necessary. That this, with the height, the form of the home would meet the requirements of the design guidelines. Cross gable fairly neutral in either adding to or, you know,
It's only necessary to give roof deck access.
not necessarily as a historic character element.
I would disagree because I have asked the applicant specifically to design this cross gable form because otherwise it would adversely impact the surrounding historic context. And there is a guideline for decks. It's 4.17B, which I did not put in my staff report, but it says do not incorporate a roof deck unless it is not visible from the street, is oriented away from the neighbor's yard, and is screened to reduce privacy invasion, such as with an inset roof design and solid railing, and does not adversely affect the surrounding historic context. So I would say that the roof deck as designed and with the cross gable form is in compliance with that design guideline because that is providing screening to that. And the height of the structure is violating the height and bulk plane because this is a form that is typical of the district.
But also, if they were to use that as habitable space, they need to have stair anyway, and so that's where the stair would go, would be in the cross gable. So that's part of the reason to do a administrative adjustment. Yeah, thank you. Yeah.
Well, if you're helping us to make a case for approval separate from simply the amendment. Because again, I think in our approval, we're understanding that the reform quickly works, which is the justification for the recommendation. That meaning perhaps a consensus on 2 out of 3 conditions for the south cross gable and the overall height, which is height and bulk, but not specific to the roof.
I think our motion should be to approve the application and to approve a recommendation for.
You can also table the recommendation for height bulk plane until the phase 2 submittal. That's not something you have to resolve. Okay, sure.
We've deliberated enough here to establish that we're not going to add decks as a character design feature of the Curtis Park Historic District. If that, which may or may not be part of the future Jefferson Park Historic District or other places, right? Not to get us off track. Well, in that case, if there's consensus here around the original motion.
But don't forget, if you want to add in the bulk plane and height recommendation for administrative adjustment, you need to steal it from the
Yep. Would someone like to try a motion?
Ready to, unless someone else. I've been doing this a lot, so I don't have to do it.
Sounds good.
Okay. I move to recommend a height and bulk plane administrative adjustment for the primary structure to the zoning administrator per section 12.4.5.3 of the Denver zoning code and approve application number 2023-COA-8 for the Phase 1 mass form and context at 3032 Champa Street as per design guidelines 4.1 through 4.6, 4.8, 4.15, 4.18, and 4.19, character defining features for the Curtis Park Historic District, presented testimony, submitted documentation, and information provided in the staff report.
Second.
Second.
Second. All of those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. Motion carries. And project is approved in Phase 1. See it for Phase 2. Right. I believe our last design review for the day here is number 2023-COA-009 at 1446 and 1448 Stewart Street.
So our last project is also for Phase 1 mass form and context approval of new infill construction on an individual landmark site adjacent to the Spangler House, which is the Denver landmark. However, the vacant lot to the north of the property is also within the boundary of the landmark designation. The commission has previously reviewed and approved a zone lot amendment on the site, and then also reviewed and denied a new infill project on the site. So here in aerial, the red is the vacant lot. It's not currently vacant because there is a non-historic garage on it, but the commission has approved that demolition, so that will be demolished. And then in yellow is the Spangler House. Here you can kind of see some streetscape view of that area. It's kind of hard to get good images of this block due to all the trees around it. But here you have the Spangler House, and then to the north you had a duplex structure. So the proposal before you today, the slide to change, is for a new duplex structure that will have the appearance of a single family residence as the secondary entrance into the duplex will be camouflaged on the south elevation of the structure. There is 26 feet of separation between the proposed duplex and the Spangler House. So the proposed duplex is oriented to the north of the lot and closer to the newer development that is on this side of, or on in this area of West Essex. So here is the proposed site plan. Generally speaking, the massing, the overall massing footprint has not changed significantly from the prior submittal. The applicant is proposing massing that is still very similar to the footprint of the Spangler House with a recessed porch, and then a projecting, I don't want to call it tower massing anymore, but a projecting massing on the north side of the site. So very similar footprint to what you see with the Spangler House. And then the proposed duplex will also have a garage in the rear. The Spangler House does not have a garage, but it's still appropriate to do garage development on this block. Here is just the general floor plan for the proposal. Again, the overall floor plan has not changed significantly from what the commission saw, but the applicants really restudied that exterior expression of context and form on the proposal. The garage has changed significantly, and I'll have some additional comments on the garage when we get to some of the garage. So here is the proposed front elevation. This structure also violates the height and bulk plane. For this zone district, staff do feel that this height and bulk plane violation for this structure is compatible with the surrounding context. It is difficult here because the surrounding context essentially is the Spangler House, but there are other William Lang structures within this neighborhood that have very tall heights. So you can see that the Spangler House significantly violates the bulk plane and height here. This structure is more violating the bulk plane than the height. It is a minimal encroachment into the height, but we feel that it serves as a nice transition between the Spangler house and the adjacent development. So we are recommending approval of that height bulk plane violation. Additionally, the applicant has gone for a more contemporary design that is no longer a similar replication of the massing of the Spangler house. So previously, it did have a tower massing and a cross gable form. Now the applicant is more proposing a flat roof form and a more contemporary front facade design. So just for reference, this is again what the commission saw at the last meeting that you expressed significant concerns over being too replicative of the Spangler house. And then this is the proposal that is so difficult. And this is the proposal before you today. So staff do feel that this revised design does meet the commission's discussion. All of the Lang houses that are in this neighborhood do have their own unique architectural expression. We feel that the new infill proposal will also have a unique architectural expression, which is of its own time, but the overall form does relate to the Spangler house. So you have two distinct massing forms on the front of the structure. It still has the appearance of a single family residence with that camouflage secondary entrance on the south interior elevation of the porch, and then that recessed porch that you do see in the Spangler house, but in a contemporary form. Additionally, we feel that the window proportions also relate to the proportions that you see on the Spangler house. You have your primary entrance and then a single window form on the ground floor. Above on the Spangler house, on the gable massing, you have on the second floor 4 bands of windows. On the second floor of this massing, you still have 4 bands of windows, but they are contemporarily placed. But you still have that transom detail that relates to the Spangler house. On the tower massing, you have 2 larger windows with a transom. The applicant is proposing a tripartite window, but it is larger than the window below and does have that transom above. And then on the Spangler house, you have these smaller windows. The windows do get smaller on the proposed massing on the 3rd floor for the new infill development. And then on the Spangler house, you have square accent windows that the applicant is picking up with their window design, and also a wider set of those windows. So we do feel that the applicant, while proposing contemporary window replacement, is still relating back to the patterns and proportions of the Spangler house. Additionally, the applicant has restudied the floor-to-floor heights and made some adjustments to the floor-to-floor heights to make the new infill development more compatible with that of the Spangler house. So you can see the exterior expression of the first floor has been brought up in the new proposed infill development, which relates to that strong stone base that the Spangler house has. So while the floor-to-floor heights are not the same as in the Spangler house, that exterior expression on the new proposed infill development better matches the exterior expression of floor-to-floor heights of the Spangler house. So again, here is the previous middle. Here is the rear elevation. Again, this is just a simple flat roof design now with a balcony in the rear for the 2 duplex structures. Don't have too many comments on the rear elevation, as this is not highly visible from the public right away and will not significantly impact the surrounding context. Here is the side elevation. That expression of windows does continue around on the south elevation. So this is the south elevation. I realized today when I was putting together my presentation that I actually don't have a north elevation of this structure. I feel like I do understand what the north elevation is intended to look like, as there are several renderings of this project proposal in the submittal. So that tower mapping will wrap similar to that, but here you can see that secondary entrance to the structure. And then here is the proposed garage structure. The garage will have a loft space in it that I will discuss further when we get to the elevation of the garage. So here is the proposed garage. So the applicant is currently using the garage building form that is indicating that it will violate the height and bulk claim in the rear. However, to achieve this form, the applicant will actually need to use the ADU building form, which will raise the height and bulk claim, which potentially will result in this not violating the height requirement in the rear zone lot. Even though the applicant will not have a kitchen or bathroom in the garage space, to achieve this building form, they'll still have to do the building form. So I think once they restudy the building form, it won't actually violate the height bulk claim. So right now, staff are only recommending administrative adjustment for the primary structure and not the secondary structure. Additionally, the violation is for a loft space and the overheight parapet. So even if the form has to remain the garage form, staff don't feel that the additional violation to the bulk claims of the garage is necessary, as it's for a loft space. So the garage form will be a little bit wider than the primary structure. However, it is principally kept at 1 story, where it is wider than the primary structure, and then it goes up to the 2nd story, just behind the massing of the primary structure. Staff did have some concerns over it having a stepped parapet design, but again, we feel that this building form and massing does need to be restudied a bit on the garage to come into compliance with the zoning code for the building form there, and would recommend not that step massing that is currently proposed. But that's something we could look at in the phase 2, depending on the exact violation or not, depending on the building. If that's confusing, just let me know. So here we have some renderings of the proposed project. Again, there's 26 feet of separation between it and the Spangler house. I know it doesn't look like it in this rendering, but that is almost as big as to put the last structure that we just reviewed in between the two structures. So it is a pretty big separation between the two structures. Again, a similar expression of 2 distinct massings on the front facade that you see on the Spangler house, that recessed porch, which is typical of the Spangler house, and those overall general rhythm of windows, not placement, but rhythm of windows is still evident in the new infill development. And then here are just some additional renderings of the project proposal to better understand. This is looking at the south elevation. This is looking slightly from the north. Here is the garage structure. Again, all of the garage massing above here, if they're using the garage form, is violating the height bulk claim. But again, I think to do this, they will have to look at the ADU building form, even without a kitchen or bathroom in that space. And then there's the garage again. Staff are generally recommending approval of this project proposal. We are recommending right now only a height and bulk claim variance for the primary structure and not the garage. But generally speaking, we are recommending approval of the mass form and context, as we do feel that the redesign meets the commission comments from the last meeting. It is not overly replicative of the Spangler house. It is of its own kind. However, it still has a relationship to the Spangler house.
Thank you. Questions for staff? Next, we'll hear from the applicants. You'll have 10 minutes. If you could raise your hand, if you're on the phone, we'll promote you to a panelist. All right, Brian, if you'd like to unmute, please start with your name and address for the record. Here too. Yeah.
Matthew, Brian.
Yeah, hi, sorry. Can you hear
Hello?
me? Hello, can you hear
Can,
me?
yes.
Okay, sorry about that.
Yes.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Ryan Borman. I live at 3325 Osceola Street, which is located in the Packards Hill District. I am the architect for the project at 1446, 1448 Stewart Street. As usual, Brittany presented the staff report wonderfully, and I appreciate staff support of the project. Again, I'm honored to be working on the Spangler House and to be designing a structure on such a storied street with so many other Lang houses. A consistent comment from the last meeting was that each of the Lang houses were different and that this property warranted a design which had the character and class of a Lang designed mansion without directly trying to emulate the adjacent Spangler house or any other Lang home on the street. Another comment was that the previous design was a postmodern interpretation of a Lang era home embodying the massing of a Queen Anne, but without any of the intricacy and detail. So rather than embark upon a design which tries to so directly reference the era of William Lang, it made sense to create something that has the same quality, style, and panache, but clearly identifies with the 21st century. Something creative and yet wholly compatible with the other Lang homes on Stewart Street. What we are presenting today is the third or fourth iteration of this design. Staff and specifically Brittany was effective in kind of reining in some of the asymmetry and counterposition, which was proposed in earlier drafts. The setback and open space patterns of the proposed design directly reference the adjacent Spangler house by closely aligning the front and rear setbacks, while allowing the Spangler house to maintain visual autonomy with approximately 25 feet of open space to either side of the historic structure. The detached garage and overhead utilities located to the rear behind the primary house. Street facing mass and form is subdivided into 3 distinct volumes to create a vertical proportion which references other Lang homes on the street. At the front left corner is a contemporary brick volume with heavy massing firmly grounded to the site. Adjacent is a lighter asymmetrical volume, which hovers over a recessed front porch. The far right side steps back to minimize the overall width of the street facade. This composition echoes the basic rhythm and proportion of the adjacent Spangler house and other Lang design homes in a quiet, neutral, and compatible way. Fenestration on the tower volume is symmetrical, but varies in rhythm and pattern from floor to floor. The asymmetrical volume is given further attention by offsetting the primary windows toward the cantilevered corner. In reference to the Spangler house and other historic styles, window heights start tall and narrow at the base level and sequentially compressed in height on upper floors. Taller windows at the lower levels are broken by transoms to further reference the historic context. Windows are recessed into the adjacent wall plane, conjuring historic building techniques. This upward compression of the fenestration is reinforced by the deep rustications in the wall materials, which align with the adjacent window volumes. This shadow-lined reveal complements the belt coursing soldier bricks and corbelline commonly found in the homes of Lang's era. Further horizontal articulation could, of course, be explored in phase 2 as required. As with many other Lang designed homes, the materials and texture are a balance of a heavier masonry material, in this case brick, at the ground floor and towers, and a lighter wood siding material, in this case lap siding, on upper floors and side elevations. The brick wraps the complete height and sides of the left volume and then around into the recessed porch below the asymmetrical volume. The brick then again picks up on the setback volume at the right side. On both side elevations, the brick wraps around to the first window at each level, creating a staggered tension between the front and side facades. Wood lap siding wraps the asymmetrical volume, further distinguishing it from the left volume. A flat panel material matching the window material ties between corner windows, creating a 2-story spandrel block. The primary materials, windows, and rustication continue down both side facades and across the rear elevation. The patterns in fenestration, however, break into a more staggered aligned, staggered rhythm that creates an energy of balance, off balance on the side elevations. Overall, I feel that this contemporary duplex presents a well-designed and considerate neighbor to the Spangler house and is a worthy addition to the Stewart Street neighborhood. Any feedback that the committee has, I would hope can be explored in phase 2 of this process. That's all I have.
Thank you. Any questions from the? Was there a second applicant also who may want to speak?
I did invite them to be a panelist. It doesn't look like they accepted. I'll try one more time.
Okay.
Ryan, do you know if Matthew is going to speak today?
I haven't heard, checked with him. Was he joining the call?
He is on the call, but he hasn't accepted Taylor's invitation to be panelist.
I could certainly text.
And
him.
he doesn't
have to. We just wanted to share that opportunity if you wanted. So. All right.
Okay.
Well, with that, open for public comment here. If there is anyone on the line who has public comment to share, please raise your hand.
No one.
All right. And at that point, then, with any recap, we will begin the deliberation.
I don't have any recap. I do need a north elevation though of the structure, but that could be provided in the phase 2. So that also, I don't think it needs a condition.
Okay. Sounds good. We asked for different. We got different. What does everybody think?
Yeah. I feel like it really addresses a lot of the concerns that we brought up, but still, as Brittany, I think, did a great job of pointing out, ties in window rhythms and overall kind of matching conceptual ideas from the staying warehouse.
I think the window hierarchy on the different levels is really helpful in that success of this. And so, yeah, I think they did a great job of addressing our concerns. Did get different, so and that's a good thing.
It is, no, absolutely. It differentiates well. And it is a unique set where half dozen homes are all very unique.
Yeah.
And not a continuous or intermixed system, but individual numbers.
How many laying homes are on this block?
I think there's seven,
Five,
four,
I
five,
think.
yeah.
Seven.
So some of them
Seven.
are pretty modest.
Yeah, some seem quite a bit smaller than the
I
state.
think, yeah, there's, most of them are in the packet, right? And some are, yeah, smaller and some are fairly monumental. All very Victorian and very unique. All right, so in this case, I think the height bulk plane adjustment is all good as well. If there isn't any other comment, we'll get to see phase 2 here at some point, but would someone like to motion?
Make the motion. Right, okay. I move to recommend height and bulk plane administrative adjustment with the primary structure to the zoning administrator per section 12.4.5.3 of the Denver zoning code and approve application number 2023-COA-009 for the phase 1 mass form and context submittal at 1446 to 1448 Stewart Street within the boundary of the A. Spangler House designation as per Denver Landmark Design Guidelines 4.1 through 4.6, 4.8, 4.11, 4.15, 4.18, 4.19, character defining features for the A. Spangler House, presented testimony, submitted documentation, and information provided in the staff report.
I'll second.
In that case, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Nay. 5 in favor, the motion passes. We'll see you for phase 2. Thank you. On our last item, moving into business items for today, is the Downtown Denver Historic District certification for qualifying structures for tax rebate.
I did them at 7:30 yesterday morning. And I was so proud. But they're just pretty pictures. You don't actually need to see anything, so it's a problem.
So let me, here, sure I'm not sharing like the content of something. Everyone creation. Let's see, property tax rebate program. Cool. Thanks, Jenna. Sure thing. Let's do real quickly. There's the Zoom. I'm going to share, Graham, if you could read that one real fast.
I will. For business items, the chair will announce each business item on the agenda, followed by staff introduction of the business item and any commissioners' questions that they may have of staff, followed by a public comment period for 2 minutes. If you would like to speak during the public comment period, please either raise your hand or dial *9 if you're joining us remotely. Don't have anyone in the room, so it will be a remote comment. Any staff clarifications can be provided before commission deliberation, and then we'll make a motion and vote.
All right, we turn your camera on at the bottom.
So the business item before you today is the certification of the 2022 Downtown Historic District Tax Rebate Program and Application. So this might be a new program for some of you commissioners. It has been suspended for the last 3 years due to COVID and budget restrictions. So I'll give you a little bit of an overview of the program and what your program today. So in 2000, the Downtown Historic District was established. At this time, ordinance number 970 was also approved, which created a property tax rebate program for owners of buildings in the Downtown Historic District. The goal of the ordinance was to incentivize building owners to renovate their buildings and make them active. And this is an incentive program that is unique to Downtown Denver Historic District. Does not apply to the lower Downtown Historic District. It does not apply to any historic building that is in the downtown area. It only applies to the 43 or so historic buildings that are in the historic district. As you may know, this is our only non-contiguous historic district. So it can be a little confusing at times when people often ask us if they qualify, and unfortunately we don't. So the eligibility for this program requires that building owners must pay property taxes and must not receive funding from the Denver Urban Renewal Authority. Their street elevations of the property and building systems must be in good repair, and that the street elevations must be substantially original in appearance or have alterations that comply with the landmark design guidelines at the time of their alteration, or they remain unaltered since the designation of the So in the summer of 2022, Landmark staff worked with the city attorney's office and the Department of Finance to make some slight changes to the program. This included changing the deadline for the program from September 1st to December 1st to better align with the budget process. And we expanded the language of those eligibility requirements slightly to encapsulate the nature of the Downtown Historic District and buildings that have gone through design review and have been approved, so making sure that they can still qualify for the tax rebate. So Jen, would you mind just moving to the next slide? So here's the map of the historic district, and you can see many of the buildings called out. So based on the eligibility requirements, we have 3 buildings in the district that are not eligible for the rebate due to receiving DURA funding. We also have a few buildings that do not pay property taxes, such as the Trinity Methodist Church, so they're not eligible for the rebate program. We had 20 applications out of 37 total eligible buildings. In the last few years, we've had 25 or so, so there's a little dip because of COVID, but not as great as I was expecting. And in early January, staff visited each building to assess whether the street elevations were in good repair, to determine whether whether they were substantially original in appearance or from the time of designation. And staff did find that all of the buildings which had applied for the rebate program in 2022 met these requirements. So with the 20 of 37 eligible
buildings that applied for the program. They all met the requirements, and therefore staff is recommending that LPC certify all 20 of these properties in the downtown historic district that are applied for the tax rebate program in 2022. If you choose to certify these buildings, then we will forward this on to the Department of Finance, and they take care of figuring out how much the tax rebate is and working with the property owners to get those rebates.
Thank you, Bethel. Any questions from the commissioners? At this point, I think if there are no questions, we can also, don't really have an applicant here, right? So it will be public comment, if there are any public comments. All right.
I'm not seeing anyone who's hand raised, so.
Looks like we're in the clear there. Sounds good. And that point will go into deliberation. Seems reasonable and straightforward.
It's a cool program. I was not aware of it, so it's really neat. But each year they kind of have to reapply, and it's not a over.
What was the reason for the suspension? Was that, I mean, because of COVID, is that because restricted access or?
It was budgetary.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay.
We all had to tighten our belts.
Yeah, every year it's about $300,000. It gets spread across the applicant.
Are all of the building owners notified, or is it a program that they're able to discover, or?
We send out mailings every year to the property owner on file, and if we have email addresses from years prior, we send that out as well. And sometimes people will be like, oh, I'm no longer associated with it, but here's the new person.
Sounds good. Perfect. Thank you again. I think if there are no questions or further deliberation, you can make a motion.
All right. I move to certify as qualifying structures all 20 of the properties in the downtown historic district, which apply to the downtown Denver Historic District tax rebate program in 2022, as per presented testimony and information provided in staff report.
Second.
Thank you. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Okay. Motion carried. And with that, let's see further discussion.
Yeah, I thought it makes sense for me to mention this since Gary asked a question when I walked in about it. And that's like, oh yeah, that's probably a good thing for you guys to know about. So we have a couple of positions that we posted for new staff that we're hiring or staff to take over positions where people have shifted out of them. One of them is a supervisor for design review. So we're restructuring the landmark team, so it's not Jen and all of staff under me. It is now we're going to have two supervisors. So me, design review supervisor, and a planning regulatory supervisor, and that is Kara. So we will have two supervisors and staff working under them. So that's what it is. I'm not leaving. I'm just we're restructuring a little so that we have more smart growth for the future.
I have a beautiful chart to show you if you come to the retreat.
Yes, there you go. So that'll be for everyone.
Select the retreat.
Perfect, thank you.
Speaking of the retreat, is there an agenda for that we'll be getting ahead of time, or is it just kind of, be ready to
You will
be to bring up anything?
I could email it today. Taylor, when do you think we'll get it posted?
I will either get it done right after this meeting or first thing tomorrow morning.
Maybe I'll email it. Stay tuned.
Yeah, she'll send it out to shut the stuff, right? The regular notification.
Yeah, it's still gonna be like noticing the public, so I'll still be sending it to you, like the way I would, the normal agenda.
That'll close the meeting.
Sounds good. Great job.
Yeah.
Thanks. Yes.